Next panelist is Dr. B. Suresh. He is National General Secretary of People's Union for Civil Liberties.
Well, friends, it's a very pleasant experience to be at a place where one thought one would not be. That IIT would eventually one day also join the larger mainstream of people raising voices of concern is a very pleasant occasion, and a very pleasant occasion to speak a very, very unpleasant reality that we are living in. 3 years back, at the height of the war in Sri Lanka, I remember a set of questions that a number of IIT students had asked. And let me repeat those same 3 questions, because I think those same 3 questions would be in many of your mind. Sri Lanka is an independent nation. Its affairs are its own internal affairs. Why should we, who are part of a different nation, interfere in that? When you talk about the atrocities committed by the Sri Lankan government, what about the atrocities committed by the LTTE? LTTE is a terrorist organization, killed huge numbers of people, not just the Sinhalese, but also their own Tamil groups. And therefore, how can you now take up this issue of what's happening in Sri Lanka? Because it's, after all, an attempt of a sovereign nation trying to protect itself against a terrorist outfit in the nature of the LTTE. And the third thing is that why should we be bothered at all? Okay, and I think that's where we all start out with. Why should we be bothered about it all? Of course, some of you IIT students may, some of you may be feeling a little bad about what's happening outside. Some of you may be feeling very bad. You go outside in a company of other students, they will ask you, IIT pasanga innada pandringa? And a few of you will, of course, be a little wary that somebody from outside will say, close down these IITs. These IITs are all white elephants. They are serving no good purpose, barring for passing out students to get what 16 lakh per year or 20 lakhs per year. Why should the national resources go into creating these white elephants?
I'm not giving, sir. That people thinking I'm not giving. After I finish it, I get visa going abroad.
Excellent, sir. Of course.
That is their thinking.
Yes, that of course, very much, sir. I had a cousin from the same institute, my own first cousin, whose batch hired an entire jumbo jet so that the whole batch could go out in one same plane, because then the cost will come out. And then people are asking, why should IITs be like that? And definitely those questions should be asked. And if you get a few stones on your back, you all well deserve it. As much as you also deserve credit for having a meeting like this. Where is the starting point? How do we try to understand this larger issue on which there is so much passion? There is so much of aggression outside, there is so much of violence. These are all words describing how in Tamil Nadu people are fighting or people are agitating over this issue. I am the National General Secretary of the PUCL. And as part of the PUCL, I have to go to other states. And in other states, I am asked, last week I was asked, can we, why are you Tamils are always emotional people. You people have nothing else to do but to keep shouting at anything, particularly if it's anti-Hindi and anti-North Indian and many of you would be familiar, or some of you may be familiar with the old Dravidian movements thing of being anti-Hindi, anti-North Indian, anti-Marwadi, and all those anti-things. And you people have nothing else to do but to keep on fighting about something that happened there. And the second issue that they talk about is, are you sure so many people died? Government of India says 70 people died. 70. It's in Parliament. In Parliament, 70 people died in this war. Is the Government of India statement say, 70 people died? And you bloody stupid, bloody Tamils, all the time, 70, you put some 3 zeros next to it, and they become 70,000, and it's not really true. And then they have to be a little generous because there are Tamilian ministers who are there, and they also happen to be in the central cabinet. You have P. Chidambaram sitting there for so long, he's a minister. He has to get elected again next time. He has to get elected. So, no, it's not 70. Add 2 zeros, so 7,000. And then somebody said, no, 7,000, maybe. Then you add a 3 here, it becomes 37,000. And then they will come, no, 37,000 in 10 years of war. Then they all felt very good. Oh yeah, 37. That's all good. Okay. And you Tamils are always bad. So why should we be bothered? So the rest of India is not bothered. I don't know how many of you are non-Tamils here? I'm just curious. Wow, I'm very pleased. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you as part of the Tamil community. Let me tell you, as a Tamilian, though I don't necessarily think as a Tamilian, let me say thanks to you, all of you non-Tamils who are sitting here. This issue is not a Tamil issue alone. This issue is not an issue of Sri Lankan Tamils or those stupid, bloody, emotional Tamilians of Tamil Nadu. This is an issue of all of us because it's an issue of democracy, and it's an issue of democracy in South Asia. And I'll come back to that why. And I'll also end as to why I think it's very important that you as IITians can do something which is not happening now. One key is in your hands, and I'll come to that at the end of what I'm going to say. Let me go back to those same questions that some of your brethren asked us in the PUCL, and we told them, there's Professor Milan here, a couple of their students came from the HSS, but 2 of them came from IIT tech chaps, and all these tech chaps always used to come like a little sidey because they're not supposed to be talking about social issues. 6, 7 of them came to our office and worked on this Sri Lankan Tamil issue. They came out with a small manual. I couldn't locate it in time to bring it here, but it's somewhere. I know it is there, and I will definitely get it. Let's get down to basics. Why should we be bothered? Ezhilan has already talked about the Indian stand in Bangladesh, stand across the neighborhood. Mr. Devasahayam talked about the China issue. Why should we therefore be bothered? It's eminently common sense. We are living in a neighborhood of other countries. Their well-being is our well-being is their well-being. Their problem has problems on us because we are all countries who share the same historical, social, cultural history. These boundaries are recent in origin. Sri Lankan Buddhism traces its roots back to Ashoka and the Sangha of Ashoka into 242 BC. And when they sent their first Buddhist monks and teachers, they went into Sri Lanka 2,400 years back. There was no India, there was no Sri Lanka, there was no Ceylon at that time. But these are all countries where the boundaries were so porous, people went in, came out. There's been a tremendous interchange of culture, of food habits, of social habits, of the way we think. And these boundaries are very recent, last 200 years of colonial history. We need to be bothered also because whatever happens there spills over into us. What happened in Bangladesh, as Dr. Ezhilan said, spilled over into India in terms of 10 million refugees. Today's newspaper carries a report that the number of Muslims in India has gone up from 8% to 12%. And the BJP is claiming that because all these stupid bloody Bangladeshi illegal migrants were coming into it. I know some of you will be shocked by the word bloody. But this is the way politics in India is being talked about. You go out and talk there. This is the language that they talk about. So what is the solution given to that? Rid India of Bangladeshis. And that's what's happening precisely in Delhi. What's happening in Bombay. The so-called Bangladeshi illegal immigrants who have come here. And that's also what's happening to 1 lakh Sri Lankan Tamils who are in India, who are in Tamil Nadu. Therefore, it is common sense that if we share boundaries and share relationships with all these countries, what happens there will affect us. What is going to happen into the Brahmaputra, in the China part of Brahmaputra, is definitely going to make a great sense of concern to us here, because there is a possible danger of the Brahmaputra becoming barren in 30 years' time. What happens to the northeast then? Can we remain quiet about what's happening there? Can we remain quiet about what's happening in China opens a port in Karachi, a second port in Karachi? What happens to security to India then? So the first, why should we be bothered? We have to be bothered if we think we are human beings as human beings. If you don't want to say for human consideration, at least for strategic considerations, we need to look at it in terms of security issues. Second, it is a matter of another sovereign country. Do we have a right to intervene in the affairs of that country? I have not still come down to the merits of what happened. I'm just trying to clear off all the larger issues so that then when we get into the key issues, we know morally and ethically where we stand. Mr. Devasahayam talked about the R2P, the responsibility to protect doctrine. For those of you who are a little poetically inclined, reading all those heavy, terrible law type of things can be very boring. There are a few reports which are really poetic, and one of those poetic reports is a report of the Responsibility to Protect Commission. It's available freely on the web. Now, if any of you want any of that document, I'll give it to you. And it got posted in a very beautiful way by Kofi Annan. When in the UN Assembly, he said, every time I move to table a resolution against a government which is killing its own people, I am always blocked by a country which says it is a sovereign issue and other countries have no right to intervene. And Kofi Annan said, are we as people of this world helpless to interfere in these issues? Are we as concerned citizens of the world, not concerned citizens of XYZ country, are we therefore completely without any legal tool or moral tool by which we can express our concern vis-a-vis a regime which we definitely see as being a rogue regime? This happened in Kosovo, it happened in the former various Yugoslavian parts, it happened in Rwanda at that time, it happened in many other countries. And it is an extremely important issue. Till date, as we are talking, this is the issue that the Indian government is putting forward, and all the major major papers in India. I hope Deccan Chronicle is not part of that, because the executive editor is sitting here. And we will hold you to question Bhagwan Singh. If your paper also says it is a sovereign country, how can we interfere in that sovereign country? 5 years the leading thinkers of the world sat and they said, is there no moral principle by which we can interfere when we know a gross wrong has taken place? Arising out of the deliberations came this wonderful document, and they said, any country which says, my defense for intervention or for independent investigation of abuses in my country is because I am a sovereign country, has to realize that the claim to sovereignty comes with a second part to that claim. So the right of sovereignty comes with the responsibility to protect. And therefore, if there is a breach of the responsibility to protect, the country which is claiming a right of sovereignty and therefore saying no other country, no other people has a right to come into our domain, will then stand on a different footing. And that footing is, since you have a duty, and it's a sovereign duty to protect human rights in your country, and if you yourself are responsible for the breach of that sovereignty, of the sovereign duty, and very interestingly they said for 3 types. One, it can be because somebody else is killing people and human rights violations are taking place. You as a nation, sovereign nation, have a responsibility to protect, but you're not part of the violator. 2, it is happening but you're not effective enough being able to stop it. And 3, very importantly, if you yourself become part of the violator, or you yourself become part of the machinery to visit violations on them. And the UN said, no. If you claim a right to sovereignty, it comes with the baggage of the responsibility. And if you violate the responsibility to protect, then the international community has a right to intervene and ask questions about your satisfying the protection of human rights to your people. So friends, you are coming here to assert your right as citizens of this world. You're not come here out of an emotional reason that you feel a little, somebody is getting affected. Let us be very clear. We are sitting here on a legal right. We are on a completely legal footing, a moral footing, an ethical foundation of nations. And we have to call the bluff of the government of India. One of the most duplicitous governments that India can ever have is now sitting in power. The same UPA 1 and UPA 2. and a Chidambaram comes and gives a statement today, perhaps I am not the foreign minister, I am not the prime minister, I am not the home minister. If you see today's thing, all the various things, I am not the home minister, I am not the prime minister, I am not the external affairs minister, but I think sense will come on them. Of course, he doesn't talk about sense. What sense he has, we have to ask questions. He says, no, but I think better sense will come and India will be, please wait for 3 more days. 22nd is the voting. Please wait for 3 more days and we will get to know good things will definitely come out of good people. We have seen these good people and good sense. And they still want us to believe them. This good sense is not a good sense that they are coming out of their own free will. That good sense we have to push. And that is what your generation is doing. I remember when I was your age, 35 years back, March 23rd, come this next Saturday, is the day when the emergency was lifted. March 23rd, 1977. I don't know how many of you know about the emergency and what happened in the emergency. Have you ever thought why it is that emergency is only talked about in political platforms and never in the history books? Why is it your social studies books have completely eliminated or whitewashed emergency? Because they want your generation to grow up thinking Indira Gandhi was the greatest leader for India. They don't want you to know about all the misdeeds that happened there, the lakhs of young people who were sterilized and killed and thrown into jails. This is the type of education that we are living in which they want us to think in a particular way and not want to think in another way. It always happens dual. And the tech people are the best. Eric Fromm had a beautiful thing. There's a beautiful writer called Eric Fromm. And he said, yes, the whole issue of technical education is to make the person think when you're pressing the button which will push the bomb, not to think about what's going to happen if the bomb falls, but is to say, this type of wind blowing, that type of temperature, we are at this height. How great we are that we were able to do it exactly that within 10% of error, it actually falls on the place it falls. You're not bothered about what happens there. And therefore, you all will get, after your placements, BTechs, MTechs, MSs, whatever, and we will all take, I'm sorry, it's very wrong to say you, I'm also a lawyer, I am also going into many of the national law schools. We are all taught to say, we are very good professionals at the end of the day. We are lovely people. We will like to do what we have to do. What else happens is somebody else's botheration. Those dirty politicians, those terrible bureaucrats. Nobody will have to say, how dirty am I? Am I being part of a larger process of creating more and more dirt? I have been part of the POSCO committee. I've lectured in your same institute about how the betrayal today is not of the political class. The betrayal is of the professional class, particularly of the technical class. And let's not get away from that. You fourth year BTech students, you have this rigmarole of the 4th year professional, what is that? Professional ethics course. It's made into a complete farce.
Same class, same
For 4
room.
years I came. Now please clap your hands, not for the fact that I'm saying it's a farce. It's been reduced to a farce. It should be made in the first year and not made into a farce. And please clap your hands that you make sure that you demand that your next generation doesn't get a farce of a professional ethic class. Because we need this very badly. But anyway, we are diverting from the topic. Therefore, when today the students are agitating, they are not agitating because of an emotional turmoil. They are agitating for a principle. What is the principle? Admittedly, the LTT had fought a war. Depending on which side of the fence you're sitting, it's a war of independence or a terrorist war. It depends where you want to sit. Reality, LTT doesn't exist today. The LTT and various other things, like Bhagwan Singh said, has been creations of India. Let's not get away from it. You may not have been born at that time, but we as a nation have a responsibility in terms of the creation of the monster. Like we created the Bindranwalis. We created the various other people who are now attacking India in various places. Let's not get it. As a nation, we bear responsibility for that. The reality also is that of a Tamil people whose aspirations for self-rule. You want to call it independence, you want to call it secession, you want to call it separation. That's a matter for political interpretation, which is not the subject matter here. The reality is that the Tamil people for 60 years had been fighting. I will just concentrate on the last few years. Can you just show the other map, the full scale map of over here. Somebody, there's another map which was the Sri Lanka, the whole Sri Lanka. In 2005, Rajapaksa came into power. I just want to go into the last 2 years. The government of India says there is no evidence of people being killed. And much as though you may think that I am being stupid or I am trying to sensationalize by saying 70 people being killed, this is the figure given in the Indian Parliament. It's not put out from my head. For 2 years, I want to ask you a question. If at the end of what I am going to tell you, you agree notionally to what I am saying, the challenge before us is to say, who is telling the lie? Who is telling lies? I hope I will be able to gather enough of you, and I have enough material with me so that if you want to read up more on it, you can get it. Well, the map is coming. There was a bloody war. It's been a very, very long, very bloody war. Thousands of people have been killed. The war ended on May 19th, 2009 with the declaration in the Sri Lankan Parliament that Prabhakaran has been killed and the LTT has been eliminated. Yeah. This is the map of Sri Lanka. And you see the northern parts, that's where the Tamil parts are, and then it goes down to the east coast. And halfway down there is a port called Trincomalee. Sri Lanka plays an extremely strategic role because it controls the entry and exit of the Indian Ocean. And therefore, it is of extremely important strategic importance to India. Forget emotion, forget Tamil, Ratatin, Ratam, Maindan and Maindan, all, forget all that. Hard strategic importance. It controls entry and exit of the Indian Ocean. Who controls entry? Controls the Indian Ocean. Controls trade. Controls various types of ship passage. And as you know, bulk of goods are being transported across the sea, not on air. Now it is in this area, that in the north part of Sri Lanka, which is the Tamil area. And whether you want to call it a homeland or you want to call it the area of their ethnic origin, it is a fact that the Tamils had been there in the north and the east. From 2007 onwards, this is also called like a teardrop, the actual ocean. From 2007 onwards, the war started to become very, very bloody. If you see on the bottom part of the thing, on the left side, is a place called Anuradhapura. Anuradhapura was a place where the first representative of Buddha, of Ashoka, carried Buddha's tooth and landed there in Anuradhapura. It's on the left side. After that is a place called Mannar, and that starts the Tamil area. From 2007 onwards, 2007 September, October onwards, the Sri Lankan government from the part of Anuradhapura started bombing into the left part, which is very close to Tamil Nadu coast, started bombing into that area called the Mannar area. And on the top, the Jaffna part, which is the island part, which was where the Sri Lankan government was in control, they started shelling on this side, on the Kilinochchi side. For a year, bombings took place. For a year, bombings took place not to kill people, but to drive people out. Between July 2007 and July 2008, for a year, the bombings took place in all across this coast. This area is a very scattered area. People don't stay like in Indian villages. They're all clustered in one village. If some of you have gone to Jharkhand, have gone to Chhattisgarh, have gone to some of the tribal areas of Gujarat or in the Maharashtra, you will know that people are scattered, small habitat, 3 houses, 4 houses, like in Kerala. Rest of India, most of the houses are in habitations. Here, there are small habitations, they're all scattered. The aim of the Sri Lankan government and army was to bomb so that people will run. So from the west, from the left side, they moved to the central part. From the north side, they moved again to the central part. For an entire year, bombings took place. I have visited these areas, I met people. So I'm talking out of, not from a book, I'm talking out of my own personal experience and visiting these people. I'm also talking something.
What the arrows indicate?
The arrows indicate the way the army progressed. I'm also talking, what I talk to you now, I talked to P. Chidambaram on 24th February 2009. These dates are important because this is before the war ended. For a year, bombs were thrown. It will not kill people. It will be near houses, people will run. And as they run, the Sri Lankan army will come behind and take over those villages. For a year this happened. And if somebody is going to tell me today that the Indian government with its radar, with its superior technical expertise, does not know about this, either he thinks he is a fool or he thinks I'm such a stupid fool that I'm going to believe him. For a year, friends, this happened and people got pushed. There was one important strategic consideration, which is you throw a bomb in an area where people are scattered, you will probably need 10 bombs to kill 100 people. You put all those 100 people into one area and you throw a bomb in that one area, one bomb will do the work of 10 bombs. This is what happened systematically. They got pushed in from left, they got pushed in from the north, from the west, until they came into the central part. And that is by about July, August 2008. From July, August 2008, the second phase of the last war started. Now, in the middle, if you see that Molekulam area, they then moved over the next 8 months of continuous shelling. There's one more thing, which is the first line. Yeah. From the central part, they moved to the eastern area where you see that box-like thing. Until in May 2009, that small sliver of land, about close to 2 kilometers by 500 meters. 130,000 people were there. Can you imagine what it would have meant? That small sliver of land. In fact, in some areas it was less than 100 meters. 150,000 people were there for 4 months from January onwards. No food, no water, no medicines. So from July 2008, the bombings took place now, no longer to drive people out, but to kill people. Because huge masses of people were in one area, bombs fell on them and they died. By October, November, December, the government of Sri Lanka said, they started throwing leaflets from planes saying, there are some no-fire zones close to the hospitals. We guarantee that those who go into those no-fire zones will not be killed. Hundreds, you will have to literally see those photographs of people fleeing. It's something like what happened in 1947 in India when the greatest exodus took place from Pakistan into India and vice versa. Or what happened in Second World War. Thousands of people, young, old, children, pushed out. In the beginning they thought they'll go back. And because this has been an old policy of you bomb and then after some time the bombings will stop. It was very deadly this time. But this time, when some of the youngsters went back to the villages, 2-3 months after they were driven out, they came back to villages which had now a completely new policy, which was pushed forward by Israel, Mossad, and by India, which is closely followed in the northeast. Which is say, once a village is removed, when the villages are pushed out, you completely level the entire village. As many of you will know if you have gone into rural areas, I was born in an urban center, city bred, upper caste, middle class person. I never knew what it meant to be in a village until I went to a village. I worked in a tribal area for 10 years in Maharashtra. And if I had to run, my company was 3-year-old and 5-year-olds. The others will run much faster than me. And then these children would say, you have a doctorate, but you don't know because you don't have eyes in your feet. That is how rural people will tell you. You go there, that Mangamaram, you turn 200 yards, then you will say Tenamaram. And the Tenamaram, this is how directions people will give you. They will say, not in terms of distance, they will say how long it will take you to walk. 10 minutes walk, half an hour walk. When you come back to an area, your cultural identity is with motives in that area. A particular temple, a village, a tree. And when you come back and you find everything leveled, you not only lose sense of what it is, you also lose a very, very important reality, you lose a sense of cultural and historical continuity. And that is what the Sri Lankan government did. That at the heart of their policy was one, to kill, two, to destroy the basis of Tamil identity in that entire area. The point to be noted here, this was systematically done. And this is not something that happened 1 year, 1 month, 2 months. It did not happen sporadically. This is a long story, and I'm not going to go into that long story. In that period of 2008 and 2009, the United Nations Human Rights Council sent 4 expert bodies to look into that area. And those expert bodies came up with very interesting recommendations. 2 of which recommendations we need to keep in mind. Because those recommendations are also closer to home. What's happening in Kashmir, what's happening in Nagaland. And that's one of the reasons Government of India does not want to enter into this area. But we as citizens need to think about. And you as young people need to really think about, because this is the India you are going to inherit from my generation. You will have to decide whether you want an India of this nature. Because mind you, the West that many of your predecessors rushed into is no longer welcome to you all. Very soon you will all be driven away from the Americas and from the Europes. Because they have no more place for people like the greatest minds of India. It is in this area that the Sri Lankan government was found by the UN reporting agencies. There's one particular quote that is very important to notice, and it said, "We have seen nations at war with itself, where there are rogue officers who kill people, maim people, and destroy the basis of life. In Sri Lanka, there are no rogue officers." So actually, when I came across it first, I was shocked. What does it mean, no rogue? I've known many killings, but I've myself, as a lawyer, handled these cases. And they said, there are no rogue officers in Sri Lanka because the entire state has become rogue. The entire machinery of civilian administration has been made into a machinery of oppression and repression, so much so that police officers and administrative officers think it is a right to kill without being asked accountability. Not what I'm saying, it's what a UN report is saying. And this is what PUCL asked the government of India. Who is lying? You want to say everybody else is lying about the killings in Sri Lanka? Okay, I'm lying because I'm a Tamilian. I may be part of a national human rights body. What about the UN? Are they also lying? The second part of what this UN reports talked about is that there is a deliberate and a conscious attempt being made to eliminate anything that is that of cultural identity of the Tamils in that area. I am now going to jump. It is in this backdrop of extreme humanitarian tragedy that is taking place. All of us were around at that time. Even though you may have been very young in 2009 and may bear no responsibility, you are still part of India, and India bears responsibility for it. It happened in the full eye and glare of the entire world, and we did nothing. To the contrary, we went to support what was happening. After the war, what is the situation in Sri Lanka? One may say, what happened before the war? LTTE was there. LTTE used child prisoners is one allegation. Perhaps they did. And the UN Secretary General's report said, yes, they had. LTTE eliminated other Tamils. Perhaps they did. And yes, they did. LTTE was very brutal. Perhaps and yes. Depending on which side you want to stand. But the question that remains with all of us, even if LTTE is the worst type of a terrorist body in the world, does that justify a government lawfully elected, democratically formulated, following a constitution, also behave in the same way? Friends, this is a question we in India need to ask about ourselves. What is the test of human rights? Is the test of human rights where you use the law in ordinary times and during disturbed times you throw out the law? Or like the Israeli Supreme Court Chief Justice said, and Israel is no stranger to terrorist attacks and no stranger to violence. And the Israeli Supreme Court said in a judgment, the test of human rights is not the test of application of human rights at times of normality. It is the test of applying human rights norms during times of terror, because the norms of human rights ride over the terror, and no government is justified in using the terror as a reason for why it will not implement the law of the land. Friends, this is what happened in Sri Lanka. Post-war, post-May 2009, many things happened. Maybe in the discussions we'll get into that. Just 3 or 4 small events for you. Because of the pressure from throughout the world, May 19th it ended. In April 2009, PUCL filed a complaint with the UN Security Council complaining of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and war crimes with a genocidal content. That a genocide is taking place, masked very beautifully. We also said during this war, no external agency was allowed to go inside. ICRC, International Committee for the Red Cross, was driven away. Media was not allowed inside. An entire area was cordoned off and only the government forces went inside. Nobody knew what happened outside. There are very uncomfortable parallels with India. What's happening in Chhattisgarh today in the name of Operation Green Hunt, same technique is being applied. And when Operation Green Hunt was announced, Sri Lankan government with great glee wrote to Indian Prime Minister 3 years back. Chidambaram was the Home Minister. It said, Mr. Home Minister, we have the experience of dealing with it like we did it in Sri Lanka. Please don't worry, when you are launching an Operation Green Hunt, we will come and give you expertise. What a beautiful turn of history. We teach them and now they come back to teach us. In Tamil there is a saying, Guru Kuminjiya Sishyan. You know, we taught them and they are now coming to teach us the gurus about how to handle our problems. But therein lies the irony that the UN agencies have talked about this. So because of pressure from the international community, Sri Lankan government ordered something called the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Committee. There was pressure on them to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission the way South Africa did. But you don't have a statesman like Nelson Mandela in Sri Lanka. You have only a person like Rajapaksa, who thinks it is not it's not the Republic of Sri Lanka, it is the Republic of the Rajapaksas. Today Sri Lanka is the Republic of the Rajapaksas. One brother is the president, another brother is the defense minister, a third brother is the urban development minister, a fourth man is the speaker of the Sri Lankan parliament, a fifth brother, no, don't tell me how many brothers they had. One family, many brothers. Okay, and then of course like in any of our societies, cousins and cousins of cousins and uncles of cousins of cousins. And the whole clan of Rajapaksas is today handling the whole of Sri Lanka. Now this will be a laughing stock if it was not for the reality of security. Hambantota is a place, it's on the south. Hambantota is at the bottom south from where Rajapaksa is from. Hambantota is somewhere out this side, and this is the entry to the whole of this. This part is the north and the east. Now, unless we have maps, these are just words and just terms, something happening there. And Hambantota is here, you can see Hambantota. Hambantota has been built with Chinese help. It is a port completely in the hands of Chinese Navy. On this entire east coast going up to here, the entire coast going up from Jaffna, a road has been constructed by Chinese labor, in which the bulk of the labor are Chinese prisoners. Even now, if you go into that area, it is Chinese prisoners who are constructing this road. From here. If this is an information I as a member of civil society says, what is RAW doing? What is Intelligence Agency of Government of India doing? What is Military Intelligence doing? What is the Home Ministry? Let them all resign and go. They are wasting our taxpayers' money. Now, from here to India, at some parts is just half an hour away. And up to here, up to this part, this whole region is in Chinese hands. If you are thinking that this is not going to be serious, I don't know what else to tell of anybody who thinks like that. The Chinese have followed a principle called the string of pearls theory. When in the PUCL we talked about this in 2009 February, there are friends of mine who told me I am a lunatic. Today, well, everywhere everybody is saying the string of pearls theory of the Chinese is to encircle India, because in 2001 they came out with a policy document, said the threat to China as the sole superpower by 2025 is not going to be USA, is not going to be Europe, it's going to be India. Two of the fastest growing democracies, fastest growing financial systems in the world is India and China. Were not the Tamils. The Tamils were stooges who were there. Two Tamil rubber stamp people were there in the committee. They put two Tamils there because they'll have to tell the outside world that there was a Tamilian there. Two Sinhalese intellectuals opposed the committee in whitewashing that report. They had a deal. Instead of a split report, let's come with a unanimous report. By the time the commission came out with the report in 2011 July, the Secretary General had set up a committee, 3-member committee, which went into the whole issue. They were not allowed to go into Sri Lanka. They sat with background information and they came out with a report in June 2011, a little unclear about the dates, but it's around that time, before the LLRC came out with a finding, very clearly holding war crimes were committed, crimes against Tamils were committed, mass crimes were committed, disappearances have taken place and continue to take place. So the deal done inside the LLRC committee is to say, they divided the timeline up to May 2009, they gave a whitewashed report. After 2009, till July 2011, they said the situation in North Sri Lanka, in Tamil areas are extremely worrying. And they said 5 very important things. Many things they said, 5 they said very important. Disappearances, enforced kidnappings and other things are still taking place in a very, very big way. Military is in complete command of the north of Sri Lanka. Military is in control of the civilian administration in Sri Lanka. Land relations are in control of the military. And 5, normality can come only if the impunity, that is the type of immunity given to government and military people, is removed. They said many other things, 5 key areas. And they therefore said immediately there should be some form of devolution of power in which the Tamils are allowed to rule for themselves or administer to themselves. From the viewpoint of Tamils, a watered down version. From the viewpoint of the inner fight that went on, it was a unanimous report. And the Sri Lankan government had a problem. This was a committee they set up. Now they cannot say we don't agree to this committee. And it was a unanimous committee recommendation. And they were stuck. If you accept it, it is very good that they have whitewashed up to the war. But the problem is, by the time in 2011, war was 2 years over. What happened in the war? UN Secretary General's committee had already said. After the war, the situation was still very, very dire. If you accept that part of the report, while accepting that no war crimes took place, you still are stuck with a problem. Your committee has now given a unanimous recommendation, unanimous finding that serious military violations are taking place, humanitarian crimes are being committed in North Sri Lanka. And they did what many other governments do. They didn't say anything about it. That is the context in which the last Human Rights Committee report, the UN Human Rights Committee met in March 2012. And in March 2012, there was a lot of pressure. And if you all will remember, or maybe you will not remember, but please go back and check out. 22nd March 2012 was the day the voting took place. Until that morning, India did not make clear where it stood. Until that morning, if India had gone this way or that way, the vote would have failed. You need 24 votes out of a 49-member UN Human Rights Council. And a very interesting thing that needs to be kept in mind, and I'm giving you all of this for the reason that I'm going to tell you in the end. In March 2008, 1.5 years before the war ended, the UN Human Rights Committee is an elected body. Each continent has a number of people who are elected. Sri Lanka was a member of the UN Human Rights Committee, Human Rights Council in 2006. Every 2 years they change. In 2008 they stood for election again in the height of the war, and it looked like they will win until something suddenly happened. 14 groups, human rights groups and civil society groups from Sri Lanka, 11 of them Sinhalese origin, wrote a letter to the world community. It is not now, it is in 2008 when the war was at its peak. They wrote a letter to the world community saying, please don't elect our government, because our government is committing huge, humongous type of crimes that you cannot think of. Now, what are those crimes? Not against the Sinhalese. Obviously, it's about the Tamils. Jimmy Carter, Bishop Tutu. Jimmy Carter, Bishop Tutu, and one Argentinian Nobel Peace Prize winner, all three Nobel Peace Prize winners, wrote a letter to the governments of the world. And Sri Lanka was defeated. They could not get the enough votes to win. The point here, this was not a Tamil conspiracy. This was because civil society in Sri Lanka, democratic society, came forward to oppose it. And this is important because this fact is not known to many people. Therefore, in 2012, when the UN Human Rights Committee met, all these factors came in the bag and finally pushed, because of the weight of public opinion in Tamil Nadu, the government of India to say yes, but after watering down the resolution. And the matter of greatest shame, not even 24 hours after India voted in Geneva, on 23rd March 2012, the Prime Minister of India writes to the President of Sri Lanka, I am very sorry, Mr. President, because of the stupid Tamil people, Tamil parties, we were forced to say, but don't worry, we have helped your country, we have watered it down, and we will make sure that nothing else will happen to it. The way I am saying it is mine, the fact is the fact. Of course, he doesn't say, don't worry, Mr. President, but that is the word that he said. And he said, it is because of internal compulsions that the government of India was forced to vote. However, we have, because of our strong relationship with Sri Lanka, and we recognize your sovereignty, we have ensured that the resolution has been toned down, which means what? Watered down, to become a meaningless weapon. That is the situation we are having today. This 22nd, the vote is coming back again. The question is, what are we supposed to do? Chidambaram is on record today to say, because he is afraid, one more year elections are coming up. Last time itself, there was a rumor that he was not elected and he did some lot of skullduggery and he got elected. Last time itself, lots of young people like you went into Chidambaram's constituency. Many of those meetings I was also part of. Youngsters went there, 5 people per village. Because I was part of the defense team from the back, getting bails and anticipatory bails for young people who went to make sure that he did not win. It will bound to happen, it is bound to happen, it will be good if non-Tamils also take part of this. It is in this context that we are here today. They will perhaps vote, but they are already trying their best to make sure it is watered down. And the last part is what I am now coming to. What do you as a community do? Can I make a request to all you student organizers, students, young people? Can you raise your voice? Those of you who are non-Tamils, and it's very important I am saying this, I am not being sectarian, I am being very, very strategic in this. Can you give a voice in the name of students of young people of India to all your other friends in other IITs and say 1 hour, maybe 2-3 days from now, all the IITs in India, including the BHU IIT and various other people, can you give a call to all the other young people of India to say this is a call to save democracy in Sri Lanka? I am saying it should be done by non-Tamils, partly because we need to deflect this whole issue that it is only stupid Tamilians, emotional Tamilians who are doing it. This is not an issue of emotional Tamilians. As we are talking, in Bangladesh it is happening to the Hindus in Bangladesh. It's happening to the Shias in Pakistan. It's happening to the Baluchis in Pakistan. It's happening in Afghanistan. And that is a point I would like you all to ponder. This is not an issue of Tamils, it's not an issue of Sri Lanka, it's an issue of South Asia. We are all nations which have been separated by geography only because of recent history. But we all share a common past. What happens in the Jhelum is going to affect North India. What happens in Karakoram range is going to affect India. What happens in Afghanistan is going to affect India. And what happens in India, the pollution and various other things that are happening in India is going to affect everybody else. We can't be ostriches thinking that we are not going to be bothered. Your generation is going to see acid rain 10 years from now. India is already sitting on a water volcano. And part of the water volcano is across boundaries. It's nothing to do with India. So may I make a request to the organizers here? Can you take up this issue as a pan-IIT issue? In the next 2 days or 3 days, the vote is going to come up on the 22nd. And the government of India needs to be told, we are calling a bluff. We are going to call you a lie, but this is not an issue of Tamils. We are going to call a lie. It's not as though your hands are not bloody, your hands are full of blood. Rajiv Gandhi was killed, it's a tragic affair. For the sake of one person, you can't hold an entire nation to peril. I am not being partisan here. I am not talking party politics here. I am talking hard realities which the Supreme Court of India has said. Supreme Court of India said Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated not because he was a political leader or a former prime minister, but because of the atrocities committed by the IPKF on the Tamil people, particularly on the women in Sri Lanka. And it was a revenge murder as much as most other murders are revenge murders. If I say it, I'll be castigated. Will the Congress party say the same thing of the Supreme Court? Let them do it. Therefore, I would like to end up by saying, this is a wake-up call. I'm traveling throughout India. Human rights is a terrible peril in India. If you think Tamil Nadu is one ocean of peace, or garden of peace as they would like to say, you are living in a fool's paradise. Yesterday, students were given 3 hours time to get out of their hostels. Imagine if you are given 3 hours time to leave your hostels and go back to your places. If you are living nearby, that's fine. What about if you are from Assam or from Jharkhand or you are from some other place? And policemen come into your hostels to make sure that you are driven out? This is the democracy we are living in. Is this the democracy you want? That's a larger question. The shorter question, is this the democratic nation which betrays its own people? That is the issue. If you have guts, you have spunk, and you have a spine. You have no time to think, but to take a stand. If you want to stand, there are many of us who are willing to stand with you. I know I may be sounding very radical here. I'm not talking radical stuff. I've not got into politics at all. That's a different ballgame. I'm talking about humanitarian concern, human rights ethos, and the rule of law. And that is what has been tabled, that is coming up for tabling for resolution day after tomorrow. The resolution says rule of law, humanitarian justice, reconciliation, and truth. That is all that we are asking you to do. If you also believe in them, please join the ranks of people and let this voice from IIT Madras go to the rest of India. Maybe it's a first attempt, but this attempt will need to be replicated in many, many other issues. Thank you.